All right, the top of the hour. So I want to just wish everyone who's joined us here today a good morning, good afternoon, and a good evening to all of our audience who have joined from across the world. It's my pleasure to introduce you today to the eDataValidator solution, which is available as a web-delivered and offline solution, your choice entirely. And we're going to walk through both options for you today. I wanted to give a little bit of history before we begin, and that's to say that a little bit over a year ago, we started getting calls from our friends across the preclinical and clinical data ops community urging us to release eDataValidator, which had been part of our XBiome regulatory solution for well over 12 years. Industry wanted an affordable validator that could be run any number of times on any number of studies by any number of users. They wanted more ownership over their validation story. They wanted a validator that was fully up to date with the latest CDISC, FDA, and PMDA validation and business rules, and which, as is common for larger enterprises, could also accommodate custom business rules and validation of custom control terminology. So we took our eDataValidator, which has been in use in industry for well over a decade, and made it a commercially standalone available tool, available in the most modular, flexible manner possible to suit consultants, CROs, and sponsors of all sizes. You're going to see that here today. And we've had a really overwhelming positive response when we launched eDataValidator, and we have some newer members of industry asking for demos and use cases in some custom circumstances and instances. So we welcome your asking any questions that are particularly unique to your enterprise, and we're going to be providing written responses to you. So please do use the Q&A function in the chat. And if you have a private message, you can privately message any one of the hosts here today on today's Zoom call. So let us know any of the questions that you have, and we're looking forward to having that conversation with you. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague now, Soumya. Soumya, over to you.
Well, thank you, Rahul, for the brief. And I would like to thank again everyone who joined this webinar regarding eDataValidator. So let me start sharing my screen, and today we'll quickly walk you through what are the uses of eDataValidator, how does it function, and how to access eDataValidator. So eDataValidator is available to the industry, and you can directly download it from PointCross website under the product section from eDataValidator section. So navigating here will allow user to provide their company email ID and just click submit, so that you'll get an access email with your user credentials and a password to log into the eDataValidator application. So we completely offer to any user a free 30-day trial to use the eDataValidator, and then if you still like it and want to continue the usage, you can purchase it at a very low cost. So we offer it for a single person use, for a group of people, and also at an enterprise level for marginal audience, or for a CRO company who has a lot of users who require to use the validation for validating the study datasets. So like I have said, you can freely subscribe to eDataValidator for a 30-month trial by just providing your email ID, and you'll get an email. So just cross-check based on the company's policies. You might not receive the email. If you haven't received your email within the next 1 minute with the user credentials, please try to check in your spam or clutter, just in case if the mail has landed over there. Okay, so let me quickly walk you through the eDataValidator application. So like we have said, we offer eDataValidator both as a server-side application and also as well as a desktop application. The usage of both server and desktop is the same to validate your study datasets and against the conformance rules or the regulatory rules released by FDA, PMDA, and CDISC authorities. And also PointCross has also defined set of additional rules, so user can cross-check these validation rules also against the study datasets. And also any sponsor-specific rules, or if user has their own company specific rules, or a user could suggest those rules to PointCross by using this proposed new validation checks feature. And the next thing is user can download this eDataValidator desktop application directly from the SaaS server application, and also this desktop link is available in the email sent along with the user credentials. So once the desktop application is downloaded, the desktop on installing the application would look like this. First, I'll walk you through the SaaS application or the server side application, and then we are going to discuss about how the desktop application works. So like we have said, eDataValidator is available for a single user use or a group of users. The next step when multiple users are involved is to assign them into a or give them access to a separate business base or a dedicated space for that set of users belonging to an organization or a group of companies. So for that case, user administration is a module which allows to manage different users present in your company. So you can just add those users to this module so that users can be added and they'll get access to work with eDataValidator at the server side as well as the desktop side. So today our demo is to show you how validation can be performed, how quickly, and what is the outcome. So to begin with, today I'm just showing you the clinical study validation. So the first step of validation is mainly to have an identifier for that particular study dataset. So every study dataset is identified with an identifier, whether it's a CRO study ID or a sponsor study ID or any specific identifier. So with that, user can create a new study. So user will just have to provide their study identifier or an identifier in this placeholder, and on save and promote, this placeholder or this study will be the placeholder for any study datasets which they will be loading respective to that particular identifier. So user can start loading the datasets in this respective study and start performing the validation. So the next step, once a study is created, the next step is you would like to load your datasets and perform the validation. So to perform that validation, generally there are few prerequisites like the standards applicable for that study datasets, means whether it's for a SDTM or for an ADaM, which type of IG you want to validate these datasets with, which define you would like to validate these datasets, or with which CT you would like to validate. So this basic information can be captured at the study specification level. So by default, the system auto-populates with the latest IG and the CT version, and user choice to change based on their study datasets. So if your study datasets belonging to SDTM 3.2 version or a 3.3 version, so based on that, the IG version can be changed and updated to that respective IG or a CT or a defined version. So here the defined version, so if your datasets are having a defined version of a 2.1 or a 1.0 or a 2.0, that details can be provided so that the system will consider this as an input of that defined file and start executing the validation rules. So this is the placeholder to select the validation rule sets. So we, eDataValidator, we support both the FDA released validation rule sets, PMDA released latest version 4.0, as well as the conformance rules released by CDISC. So since this is for clinical, you will be seeing the SDTM conformance rules and ADaM conformance rules. And if it is for non-clinical, you will be seeing the SEND conformance rules. And also the defined file validator rules, which are released by CDISC for both the defined version 2.0 and 2.1 are available, as well as the defined version, the PMDA released defined rules with the latest version 4.0 is available in eDataValidator. And also, since the PMDA is mainly concentrated on SDTM and ADaM, the applicable defined rules were also implemented for SEND as well. So you can perform the validation by selecting the respective validation checks, and the placeholder where user can load the files is at the respective folder. So there's an option for user to upload the files, and they can just drag and drop the files or browse the file, and on upload, the validation will be automatically initiated based on the above selected rule sets. And for each of the corresponding rule set, a validation report will be available here, displaying the list of issues, errors, or warnings or rejects. So user can have a quick look by downloading this validation reports. And also this is the placeholder for the defined validation, which is executed. So at the application level, the main benefit is for a single study, if user has performed multiple iterations of data loads and corrections on the data sets based on the validation outcomes, they can have a clear picture, or they will know clearly what happened in each load and what data sets were loaded and what has happened to that respective folder loaded, because the system will capture the information of the each load happened, and within each load the type of validation occurred or the type of files loaded can be extracted from the system, and it will act like a repository for the at a higher organization level, where they'll have a traceability of each action performed with respective to that study datasets. So during the interim phase of the study datasets, the data managers might be loading multiple versions of the datasets, and it would result in quite a lot of corrections. And after maybe 10 to 20 loads, you might not know what is actually the first version or what they have received, and you may not have the exact copy of the first used dataset, and you may not know what has been corrected or something new has come up in any in-between version of the dataset. So this will help the end users to clearly have a repository of all the file loads, as well as what changes have been performed in the datasets compared to the previous loads. So user can view the datasets which are loaded through an XPT viewer in the application level itself. So it just opens the XPT as it is to view what data is available, and the same for the defined file as well. So the defined file as well can be visualized online in the server side. And also, once the validation is completed, so we have provided a quality checks dashboard which will provide the validation outcomes in an interactive dashboard, which clearly explains the issues at a error level, at a severity level, or a category level, and also at a domain or a rule level. So you can see here this dashboard clearly highlights the type of rule sets executed, and within each rule set how many rejects are there, how many errors are there, and how many warnings are there. So if user would like to drill down to a specific severity of interest, they can see clearly in the PMDA version how many rejects are present. And if at all user would like to drill down at a specific data set of interest, so they can just navigate to the data set, which will automatically arrange the list of issues as well as the severity, the type of reports executed on this particular data set. And if user is interested to view at a single rule level, or they would like to see the data set and analyze what are the issues present inside the data set, so they can quickly navigate to the data set, open the data set, and they can visualize at this particular data set so and so issues are found. Okay, this issue is present exactly where, and they can also visualize and analyze, okay, this is where the issue is present, so they can quickly provide some notes explaining the end users or the team members, telling, okay, so and so issues are present in this particular data set. If these have to be rectified, these are data collection issues, or some cases will be there where, as per the study protocol, that is what the information is available, and you will not be able to capture some variable information. So even though there's no data, you'll have to keep that variable available in the dataset. So at that time, even though the rule triggers, you can tag it with a SDRG comment and explain that this particular issue cannot be rectified because that is how the data is captured as per the protocol. And this SDRG comments can be exported to the draft SDRG, which is available as part of the application. So these notes, all the notes which were provided, can be visualized here. And once these notes can be exported and exchanged between the internal team members for data corrections. And once the data is corrected and suppose loaded back, suppose based on the comments, these two issues were rectified and the dataset has been reloaded. At that time, automatically the system verifies these rules, and if this is corrected, the system will automatically change the status to resolved. So this helps the internal team members to communicate easily and to assign it to a respective user to correct these issues, and it will help in an easy evaluation of the validation outcomes. So the next functionality is, I have been telling, it acts as a repository for n number of loads performed on that respective study. So user can compare two different versions, the first version to the latest version, and see what has been changed, if there are any new files coming up, or the file size has been increased, or if within the same file if something has been changed. Okay, in the previous load maybe there are only 10 issues, but now there are 14 issues. So this clearly gives a picture of what has been changed, if some new data set has come up, or something has been changed or rectified. And also at the issue level, suppose in the FDA, this data set was requested to be corrected, or to correct or fix two issues, but fixing those issues may be resulted in some new errors. So what are the new errors compared to the previous version to the current version, which means they are not there in the previous version, but they might have come up late recently, maybe because of a new data set domain being added into the study data package, or maybe in there were new errors in the existing data. So that can be clearly identified. And some amount of issues, if they have been addressed, so if there are around 30 rows of issues, out of which some 60 are, out of which some 16 are fixed, so that information can be clearly visualized. So there used to be 80 issues, but now the count has reduced to 64. And likewise, if the issues were expected to be resolved, so the resolved issues count in each of this can be visualized, and this summary also can be exported with this feature. So this is at the quality checks dashboard, which will give an overall view or analysis of the validation outcome. So this is applicable for both SDTM and send, available in the server side. The next feature is the define generation. So there are few cases where the define file is not may not be prepared yet, or it's not available yet. So we offer, once the XPT files are available and if they are loaded here, there's an option to generate a define.xml file. And once the define file is generated, it will be automatically made available in this package. And if user would like to edit, so when we auto generate the define file, most of the things like the length of the variables, the data type of the variables will be automatically populated or captured based on the data sets loaded. So if there are any additional corrections, if user would like to change the keys, or they would like to modify or attach some support documents, or they would like to specify any control terminologies, that can be managed or updated at the define editor. So this is how a define editor would look like. Each metadata is mainly to display the respective information. So the dataset level will capture and show you the domain information, variable level will with the respective domains, control terminology with all the referenced code list along with its terms in the code tab, and value level metadata. So if user would like to create any specific value level conditions, those can be defined here, like by defining a where condition for using a code list or an algorithm. And that information also can be generated into the define file by updating in the define editor. So any support documents, if user would like to provide, can be attached here, and the same will be available in the define file once generated. So this is how a define file which is generated will be available. So the define file will be available in both a PDF and an XML and an XSL formats. So this is how the generated define file would look like. So at the server side, we also allow users to download this or extract these loaded XPT into an Excel format, and also an option to download the draft SDRG is available here. So I'll show how a draft SDRG would look like in the desktop when I finish at the desktop validation. So at the server side, these are the features, and the workflow is the same. So user will just have to create a study ID to load their study datasets and perform the validation. If it is for clinical validation, they just have to navigate to the clinical study validation module. And if it is for non-clinical validation, they'll have to navigate to the non-clinical study validation module. So this will have all the list of send IGs as well as the latest CTs and any validation rule sets released by both FDA and CDISC authorities. And so moving on to the next feature, which is the desktop validator. So once login, based on the user credentials, automatically the system will take the user credentials from the server application. They'll just have to log in once in the desktop validator, and going forward, this tool acts as an offline tool. Since, like I have said, you can perform multiple loads of validation, so it doesn't care about how many times you load or what type of data sets you load. So you can perform these validation without the worry of having an internet connection. So this tool works offline as well. So user can just perform the validation by selecting the file. So the first step here is to select the files. You can just browse the files or drag and drop the files. And once the files are loaded here, the basic information about the study metadata will be provided here automatically by the system, and the validation options. So I have already told you, to perform a validation, the basic things are the standard selection and any external dictionaries if applicable for the study datasets. There are few rules which run based on MEDRA, UNII, and Houdini dictionaries. So the freeware dictionaries are already made available for the end users to load, to select. But if it is a paid dictionary, user can browse it from their local, and they can just upload the CT version by providing the CT name and browse the file and import the CT. So that version of file will be available here to select in the dropdown. And once the validation information is selected, user can select the list of validation rule sets they would like to run on these studies. So we have all the latest rule sets published by FDA, PMDA, and CDISC available here. So it's user choice to select any validation rule set and perform the validation. And also, as part of the desktop tool, you have a quick feature where you can choose which type of rules or the which rules you would like to run on these datasets, because every iteration maybe could be a result of a correction of the dataset. So maybe in the previous load, a user suggested to correct some 5 rules. So the next load, maybe user would like to check only if these 5 rules are rectified or not. So at that time, user can filter only those specific rules corresponding to a specific rule set, or only across the rule set they would like to run only those 5 rules, and those 5 rules can be selected from the filter rules option, and they can run only those specific rules. And also, if sometimes not necessarily they would like to select a few rules, maybe sometimes they would like to see they would like to exclude few rules, because sometimes they know this particular rule will fire for their dataset, because that is how the dataset is captured based on the study protocol. So they do expect this rule to fire. So that time it's unnecessary to have this rule run on your test datasets and say, okay, this is the error or this is the unwanted warning. So since you already know that this rule will go as a SDRG comment, so at that time user can exclude some specific rules and say don't run these rules on this dataset, so that you'll not have any unwanted warnings or errors which you already know in your test datasets, and you can concentrate only on the required error and warnings. So this lab is to select the defined validation rule sets for your defined file. So we do support for define 1, 2, and 2.1. So based on the applicable defined rule set, you can select these, and on selecting validate, automatically the validation will be initiated, and within few seconds you will have the validation reports available here as shown below. So these are the validation reports corresponding to each of the type of the rule set user has selected. And this is how a validation report would look like. So we do provide a summary of the rules, the summary of this validation, which all domains are present, and the engine version and the number of issues, and also the list of domains present in this particular package which was loaded, and also the file size. And this issue summary tab will give a high level picture of within each data set how many rules are triggered, and the detail sheet will give a clear picture of all the issues present in across the dataset. So user can concentrate on each specific rule or per domain or a file type, or only on the severity. If it is case of PMDA, they can concentrate on the severity. If it is for FDA, they will have to look at all the issues and try fixing them. And the next tab, which is the validation rules tab, will have the explanation or the rule set description and the message as released by the regulatory authority. So if it is for FDA, you will have the FDA release message as well as description. And along with this information, we do provide implementation notes explaining what each of this particular validation rule is being triggered for. So you can see here the implementation notes is clearly to explain how this rule is implemented and in which case this rule will trigger. So this will help the end users to understand why this rule is triggering, and it will help them in resolving the issues. So moving forward, so these are the validation reports. The next step, so apart from validation, we do offer additional features like the simplified ts.xpt file. So since it's a mandatory to submit a TS file along with your submission for the studies which were conducted before 2016. So if at all this is applicable or available for both SDTM as well as SEND. So user can just the minimalistic information by providing only the study ID and by selecting either the study date or the null flavor, and click of generate will provide the ts.xpt file. And this is how the xpt file would look like. So since for this particular study, a study start date is selected, so the TS val will clearly have whichever the value of the start date which is selected in this options. So the same will be incorporated with the minimal details. So this ts.xpt file can be submitted as part of your submission. And the next features are the SDRGs. So we do provide the NSDRG, the non-clinical SDRG, as well as the clinical SDRG. So at the server application level, since the data set is already loaded and the validation is already completed, when you click generate of SDRG, automatically all this information will be pre-filled and available in a Word document. So at the desktop level, user will have to browse the study dataset, upload any one of the validation report. If you would like to have both the validation outcomes in your SDRG, user will have to select both the validation reports by just browsing them from the local, and then providing the defined report also. So any validation outcome, if you'd like to see in your SDRG, you just will have to upload that Excel file over here, and then by selecting the SDRG template. So for non-clinical, it's the template version 1.2, and for clinical, it's the template version 1.3. So by selecting this, automatically user can generate the SDRG template. So this is how the generated SDRG template would look like. So right now I'm showing you the clinical SDRG template, which will have the pre-filled information taken from the datasets, and some information will have to be manually populated by the sponsor based on the study protocol. So those sections will be highlighted clearly with the color context, so that it's easy for the end users to understand and update the information. And like I have said, all the validation outcome based on the selected validation reports is automatically filled here. So user can just go through this list and provide an explanation for why these issues occur, or why do they still keep these issues in the study datasets. So this is how a draft SDRG will be available. User can just update the remaining required fields and convert it into a PDF and use it for submission. So moving on, the next one more feature, which I have already explained as part of the server application, is to convert your XPT files into an Excel file. So this is mainly for visualization and review purpose. So user can just drag the files to, or browse the files and save the dataset to Excel. So whichever XPT files are loaded can be converted into an Excel, which will represent the dataset like this. So each domain will have one sheet created with the data available in their XPT. So the variable information will be available along with the data present in the XPT files. So this is the feature to export your XPTs into an Excel format to visualize and review or correct the data sets. And so these are the features at both SaaS server application side as well as at the desktop side. In case if there is if there is an update available to the eDataValidator, a link will be available in the desktop application like this, which will request the user to install this update. So on click of this link, automatically, which requires a network connection to update the latest update given to the eDataValidator, and the release notes will clearly explain what updates have been provided as part of this release. So it can be a bug fix, or it can be a new rule set, or it can be a latest version of a control terminology file. So all the CDISC released control terminology files will be curated by point first, and we will be made it available to the eDV users. So users can just browse from the validation options and they can select the latest control terminologies, or else if they would like to have some old control terminology files, they are also available here, and user can just bring them to make it available in the drop down list. So this is how to update the eDataValidator, and automatically the server application will get the updates automatically based on the production upload. And if there are any further doubts, user can quickly use the help guide to see the online videos on how to use QC dashboard, or how to generate an SDRG, or how to perform validation. And also user can quickly send us some feedback if they still have any questions, or if they have any issues, being some software issues or any technical issues if occur, can be sent to us through using the feedback option. So these are the features at the eDV server side and the desktop level. So before we end this webinar, I would like to highlight the fact that eDataValidator can be downloaded for a free 1-month trial, a 30-day free trial for any user by just giving their company email ID by navigating to the products eDataValidator section. So you just have to give your email ID and click submit to receive the user credentials. In case if you haven't received email, the credentials, please try to check in your spam or a clutter. And if you still haven't received it in the next half an hour, please try to communicate us so that we can manually set up your user access to the eDataValidator. Feel free to ask us any questions in the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Soumya. So for all questions that we've received on Q&A, we will respond to them in writing. And if there are any questions following this, please do let us know at edvsupport@pointcross.com, and we'll post a message there in the link. But I want to thank all of you for having taken the time for joining today, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.